Have you ever felt like if you could just be less you and more like how normal people are, you would be more successful in life? This is something that I've struggled with a ton, with just feeling like, oh my gosh, if I could just think of this a normal way or act in a normal way, like it would be fine. And I could actually have some success in life and could actually get what I want out of life. And one of the things that I'm learning as I get older is that the uniqueness of you is where your success and where your identity in life is going to be found. This was hugely reinforced to me sitting here looking at two books that are on my desk that I just finished reading recently. One is Rebel by Graham Cochran, Find Yourself by Not Following the Crowd. And the other one is The Swamp Fox by John Aller, How Francis Marion Saved the American Revolution. These two books seem completely not related at all, right? It's just like one's like a self-help book about how to, like succeed in life. And then the other one is just a historical account of a guy back in the Revolutionary War. If you don't know, Francis Marion is the guy who was called the Swamp Fox in the Revolution. He's loosely what the movie The Patriot is based on. But he was a guy that was doing guerrilla warfare down in South Carolina during the Revolution, and in a huge way, like he really kind of saved the whole American Revolution and the work that he was doing down there, in the way that he kept fighting when all the Continental Army wasn't there and couldn't come, and it was like the British were going to take over everything, and the only reason that they didn't was because of this guy and his troops down there. But what hit me about this morning, so I was sitting here looking at these books, and I was like, oh my gosh, these books teach the same lesson. Right? And it's that what makes you uniquely you and makes you different from everyone else who does what you do is actually the best thing about you. And so often we think about what makes me different and weird, and we think of it as a bad thing. Like, oh, if I could just think the way that normal people think about this, or if I could just act the way that normal people act in this situation. And the reality is that if you're going to have an impact, it's going to come from not following the crowd and being uniquely you and doing things your way. That's what Graham talks about in this Rebel book. His path to success, Graham is a guy who I found about way back when from a company called the Recording Revolution. There's a YouTube channel that he had started. And then he's gone on now and he's become an author and he's a coach and all this stuff. And his whole path throughout all of life was building this online business and doing it his own way and following his own joy through all this stuff and working within his own identity and not listening to the people that are like, well, this is how you have to do it and this is what needs to be done, right? And then I look at this book about Francis Marion, and one of the things that the author says at the end of it is he said, unlike so many heroes with feet of clay, Francis Marion holds up to scrutiny. The more one learns about him, the more he inspires admiration. He has been called the Washington of the South. And then earlier in the book, the author quotes Henry Lee in his memoirs, writing a assessment of Marion's character. And what Henry Lee said, speaking of Marion, was, he was reserved and silent, entering into conversation only when necessary, and then with modesty and good sense. He possessed a strong mind, improved by its own reflections and observations, not by books or travel. And he goes on to a bunch of stuff. And then he says, he was virtuous all over. Never, even in manner, much less in reality, did he trench upon right. Beloved by his friends and respected by his enemies, he exhibited a luminous example of the beneficial effects to be produced by an individual who, with only small means at his command, possesses a virtuous heart, a strong head, and a mind directed to the common good. And the main thing that stuck out to me about Francis Marion in reading this book is that he was engaged in guerrilla warfare where the basic rules that govern normal warfare don't even apply within guerrilla warfare. So there's all these things that are allowed and all these atrocities that are kind of allowed was like, well, but like we're fighting, unconventional warfare. So we don't have to be all like nice about it, whatever. And what is amazing is that what made Francis Marion stand out and what has kept his reputation in the years going on was he was a man who did not allow these atrocities, and he did not allow people to be mean in an evil way, right? He was like, we're fighting a battle and like we're going to win, and like we are perfectly ready to bring violence, but we're not going to torture the enemy, and we're not going to provide no quarter, once we've defeated them. Like when they surrender, like we're going to stop. And he had this standard of decency that he held amidst a style of warfare that throughout all of history, like the norm of guerrilla warfare is like, dude, it's no holds barred. Like, we coming for you, and there ain't like we're not sticking to any chivalrous whatever around here. Like, we're just going for it, right? And what made him stand out was his refusal to allow things like that. He would not allow them in his presence, and he would not allow them from his men in his absence. He was unbelievably strict about enforcing a code of conduct, even amidst being in a battle and fighting this unconventional war where that was almost never a thing that was considered. Like, it was like, that's the one place where you just throw out the whole rule book and you just kind of do whatever, right? And he would not allow it. And the thing that made him, again, so powerful and made so many guys want to follow him was this sense of character that he had that goes completely against the grain of normal guys leading an unconventional warfare unit, right? And so it's like, what made him successful and what made his life bear up to scrutiny hundreds of years later is this fact that he leaned into his uniqueness, where it was like, okay, I'm going to be fighting an unconventional war. Like, he's one of the best that's ever done it, right? But I'm not going to do it in the conventional way that people normally fight an unconventional war. I'm going to do it my way. And my way says that the men are going to stay clean, and they're going to stay trimmed up, and they're going to stay in order. And we're going to enforce these codes of conduct about how we treat the enemy. And we're not going to do all these things that are normal, right? And so it just, sitting here looking at this, I'm like, you could not find more seemingly disconnected books that actually are teaching the same message, which is, if you want your life to matter, you have to embrace how you are uniquely wired. And instead of seeing that as a downfall and looking at it as like, man, I just wish I could act like everybody else, you have to recognize the fact that I don't act like everybody else in this situation is really what is going to carry my legacy on. That's the unique thing that God has given me to be different, to make me stand out within this group of people. So if you're struggling with your uniqueness in whatever area, get both of these books, read both of them. They're so good, and they will help you so much with just this feeling of like, oh my gosh, the uniqueness, the things that make you uniquely you are the things that will lead to your ultimate success and your ultimate legacy, because you are here to do something normal in an abnormal way. So there you go. Two totally unrelated books. This is why I love reading. This is why I love reading broadly, because you find things that are unrelated that still connect and still reinforce the same messages that God's trying to show you in your life. So hope that helps. Talk to you guys in the next one. Bye.